When you're presenting a speech, I think there are two key things that you should think about in terms of being relatable to your audience, which I think is the most important aspect of giving a speech. The first key thing that I think you should think about in terms of being relatable is think about how you can share your own experience with the audience to make your topics seem like it's more in context and is something that the people in the audience will be able to encounter in everyday life, or kind of envision what it would be like to encounter in everyday life. So sharing an anecdote is a really great way of doing this, and the first time I adopted this approach was when I was in year 7. And I was speaking about discrimination to my whole year group and all the teachers at my school. And the way I introduced my speech was by sharing my family's experience with growing up in apartheid in South Africa. And I noticed that as I was speaking, the students in the room became more attentive to what I was saying as I was sharing the story. And I became more confident as a speaker, and instead of worrying about how much time I was spending on speaking, I kind of got lost in what I was saying, and that was a really great feeling. And before I knew it, my time for speaking had kind of elapsed, and I looked up from my cue cards and I noticed that there were 3 teachers in the room who were crying, and I felt so successful as a speaker that I could really make my speech something that everyone in the room could relate so much to, that they had that sort of emotional response. So that's the first tip that I have. Start your speech with an anecdote. So share a story that directly relates to the topic, that allows the reader to kind of put themselves in a scenario in which they can kind of see the topic you're talking about in a very direct way. The second tip that I have about speech making and being relatable is making sure you connect with your audience through eye contact. And this seems like a very basic thing, you know, make sure you look at the people you're talking to, but I think that it's so much more complex. And I think that one way of achieving this type of relatability is to make sure you're familiar with your audience beforehand. And by being familiar, I mean connecting with your audience before you start speaking. So get to know the people you're talking to, understand what their positionality is on the topics you're talking about. And I think that'll make it a lot easier for you to make eye contact with them and feel like you're really talking to them on a one-on-one level. So if you try and adopt those two approaches, firstly use an anecdote in your speech, and secondly try and connect with the people by having eye contact and by meeting with them personally beforehand, I think you'll all in all have a really great start to speech making, and I hope that those two tips do see you well along your way as a speech maker.